So, after these changes, overall, good or bad, where do you kind of feel just in instinct?
On instinct?
Yeah.
Nay.
I feel there is some good and there is some things that aren't so good. I don't feel bad about these. I just kind of feel like they aren't really solving the problems as much as they are massaging the problems. You good to rock and roll?
You're ready to rock and roll.
All right, we're ready to rock and roll. Ladies, gentlemen, and others.
Welcome back.
I'm Joey.
I'm Cursed.
Yeah, well, those Krakens aren't doing any better.
How dare you. And this is the Paint and Paper Podcast. Today we're going to talk about some more of the Unearthed Arcana changes, specifically my boys, the Barbarians.
Yeah, the Barbs.
The Barbs. Our Conans. Our Grogs.
So let's open up by talking about some of the problems that the vanilla Barbarian had, and then go into our general thoughts about these changes, and then go into the nitty-gritty of each change, and then give a review of the new changed subclass.
So I am a Barbarian main. I'm definitely more of a dungeon master, but whenever I get the chance...
That is the first time I have ever heard somebody say, I am a this class main for D&D. I have never heard someone say that.
I just take every chance I can get to play one, so...
Fair enough, man.
And a lot of my fun just comes from the fantasy of being absurdly strong. But they are a martial class that kind of suffers from that disparity between magic and martial that we covered last time.
Yeah. They're incredibly dependent on their magic items and equipment. And don't benefit from their magic items and equipment in the same way that monk or fighter do, just because they don't get as many attacks and they don't get as many weapon ability procs.
Absolutely.
We also said that there was an issue with, it's kind of going to be an issue across the board, but some subclasses completely outshine other subclasses.
Mm-hmm.
It is, aside from you and one or two other people, I almost always see people take Totem Barbarian just because of that damage reduction.
The other thing is that Berserker Barbarian was one of the prime multi-classing options because you take it to third level, you sprinkle some Paladin on top, and suddenly you have the multi-class of the multi-attack of Paladin and that bonus action Rage, damage reduction, and extra attack that you can... That's a third attack that you can hit a smite off of.
Yeah.
One of my other problems, I don't know if I've heard this talked about. I'd love to hear people's opinions, but I've noticed that Barbarians have to maintain the most ability scores of any class. They use Strength to attack, like most of the classes do, but then they have Unarmored Defense, which is very good. So you shouldn't sleep on it, but that requires that you maintain Dexterity and Constitution.
Yeah.
On top of that, there are certain class features. I think it's specifically the Berserker subclass that has the Intimidating Presence, which scales off of Charisma. So that's kind of a fourth half ability score.
Yeah, so you really kind of do need to maintain all three of those. And because, unarmored defense is really good, if you choose to not use unarmored defense, well, you're kind of capped at medium armor, so you can't get those crazy high ACs that would kind of keep you more, increase your survivability. And there's some abilities that require charisma, as you said, but then there's also the role play. If you need to have 3 dump stats and all of the kind of mental stats be your dump stats, it kind of, other than just kind of being a bumbling idiot that just kind of stumbles into it or just instinctively knows, which can be fun, but who doesn't want to be like a warrior poet barbarian? And then Another kind of issue was that there was no sort of strategic combat options. There wasn't any real way to crowd control enemies, hamstring them, or kind of like, you know, really go through or push multiple enemies.
Barbarians' modus operandi was definitely, I'm a barbarian. I'm here. You have to deal with me now.
Yeah, which is fun, you know.
I have lots of fun with that, but it is, I'd love to see them have more options.
So after these changes, overall, good or bad? Where do you kind of feel just in instinct?
On instinct?
Yeah.
Nay.
I feel there is some good and there is some things that aren't so good. I don't feel bad about these. I just kind of feel like they aren't really solving the problems as much as they are massaging the problems.
When we get to Sorcerer, Wizard, Warlock, I think you'll all agree that those are definitive buffs. When compared to Barbarian, which is kind of just like moving stuff around, it doesn't really feel right because martial classes, they need the help. And so I don't know why they wouldn't buff these guys as strongly.
So I think that what this kind of speaks to, what these changes really kind of speak to, is that they are putting a lot of stock into the mastery properties to be the thing that really elevates these classes.
I don't think they're that potent, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, but considering that there wasn't too much more given to the two martials that were released aside from the weapon masteries, it really kind of puts it in my mind that's where their headspace is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so going into our general thoughts, we feel that the class progression is a little bit more flushed out. Some things feel like they were nerfed. We'd also like to see some more RP abilities that play into the class fantasy. They introduced a new strength kind of ability where while you're raging, you can use your strength modifier to add to your certain checks. And so it's kind of said in the lore as you are harnessing primal power and you're using your strength as the math. It's just kind of left a weird taste in our mouth. It's like, this is the first time where we've encountered a situation where the stat itself isn't playing into the fantasy that the stat is supposed to represent.
We're going to get into it that you're going to start using strength to make some pretty zany checks.
The next thing that we kind of felt was it kind of feels like the Barbarian is coming online a little bit later than it was previously. Some abilities kind of got pushed back in levels. And lastly, we kind of think that the Barbarian is being robbed of a bonus action.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be our first point, actually. The next thing we're going to talk about is Rage. So let's get into it. So the big difference in Rage is that you no longer maintain it by taking damage. Making attack rolls maintains it. Forcing someone to make a save maintains it. So if you use Frightening Presence, that counts too, which is pretty cool. In spite of those, you can keep your rage up for 10 minutes as long as you sacrifice your bonus action each turn.
So instead of kind of, punching yourself in the face to take damage or, getting your buddy to hit you, you just kind of use your bonus action to kind of like puff yourself up and maintain that kind of anger.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of fun. Can't say I'll miss it. I think that's the kind of thing I've had my fun. I just want to rage now.
Duration is a very much a welcome change. Upping it from 1 minute to 10 minutes really makes it much more impactful. Right off the bat, at first level, you can keep your rage up for 20 minutes. At level 3, you can keep your rage up for 30 minutes.
So Primal Knowledge was the one that we were talking about where you're going to start making some zany checks, right? While you're raging, when you make certain kinds of checks, you can use your rage stat. You can use your rage stat, your strength stat instead.
Now it's your rage stat.
It's your rage stat. And those skills are acrobatics, intimidation, perception, stealth, and survival.
So you and I have always been of the philosophy that if a player can just sit there and explain why using a different stat than the normal thing kind of makes sense, you can use it. So if somebody wanted to make a strength-based intimidation check where they're just like flexing their muscles, that makes sense to us. If somebody wants to make an acrobatics check where it's like you could just brute force what you're trying to do because you're just that strong. Go ahead, that's fine. However, there is kind of in our minds an issue with a strength-based survival check, a strength-based stealth check, and what was the other one? A strength-based
perception-based
perception check.
Perception. So I should take a step back because, like we said, in this case we don't think it represents strength necessarily. The flavor of the ability is that it is a primal energy that infuses you while you're engaged in your rage.
Yes, and you're using your strength stat to demonstrate that. It just kind of feels odd because you aren't using a stat for what it's typically used for. You're using a stat purely as a mechanical function, no longer as like a narrative. And another thing that I kind of feel bad about this is for, dex-based barbarians. Barbarians were already super, super tied to needing high strength. This is now an entire component that kind of forces you to double down onto your strength stat. So it kind of takes away that build creativity.
Yeah, it's very true. I think the design principle for creating this was in recognition of that issue where they really can't branch out. Yeah, so you really can't maintain a good wisdom stat because of the requirements of the class. But it is kind of odd to emphasize acrobatics and stealth when they should be maintaining that or potentially maining it.
I really think that they kind of saw the Conan type sword and sorcery fantasy of a barbarian and really wanted to like play into that. And that's cool, that's fun. It just would have been nice if there was a more kind of nuanced or just a way that wasn't so kind of blunt,
Yeah. Conan's a rogue, by the way.
Yeah, fair enough.
A little bit of barbarian.
Yeah, he taps in for that damage reduction.
Yeah, exactly. What do we got next? That is the
Danger Sense.
So this one is just a combined one, right? They combined two other barbarian features, Feral Instinct
and Danger Sense
have been merged, which is pretty good. I mean, I feel like these were very similar. It's advantage on dex saves and initiative.
To be clear, Danger Sense has been merged into Feral Instinct. So you no longer get Danger Sense at, I think it was level 3. Now you get both abilities at level 7. So that's like one of the things that's kind of like a nerf. You lose some of that early game survivability to get a stronger ability later on when, you could have really used that ability for the 4 levels previously. So that's what we mean by the Barbarian feels like it's now coming online later, meaning a lot of those kind of abilities have been pushed back. Next was Indomitable Might. Indomitable Might was brought down to a earlier level. Something that's interesting is Indomitable Might now combos with the new Primal Knowledge ability.
So you'll be able to, while you're raging, you'll be able to sub in your strength score, which can get pretty nutty if you have like a giant's belt or something like that. But I'm glad to see this up front earlier. Like I said, a big part of Barbarians for me is just the I'm ridiculously strong fantasy. Having something that rogues have for their skills on Barbarian that reinforces that fantasy, I think is fantastic.
To kind of go more into the functionality of this is, I think, one of the first times where they're saying you can just use your strength score, not your modifier, your strength score, and substitute it. And so because by the wording of Primal Knowledge, you can use your strength ability for all of those checks. If you wanted to make a stealth check, you could and you say, let's have you a 20 in strength, you have technically a 20.
A dirty 20.
A dirty 20 for that stealth check.
Right. But you have to have your rage up.
Yes.
Which is the key thing. Yes. And that's why I'm still surprised that they haven't at least given one more rage or expanded the track a bit. Next
up is Brutal Critical.
What have they done to my boy?
This one is a buff and a nerf, technically. So the way they changed how Brutal Critical works, just how you calculate the damage.
Previously, it affects your critical when you... And criticals are always weird because people do criticals differently, but its intention is if I'm rolling a D12 weapon and I crit, I roll a second D12, and that second D12 is my crit damage. Effectively, let's say that is basically doubling. With brutal critical, along depending on what level barbarian you are and what stage in this feature you had, it would triple, quadruple, and quintuple that die. So you'd be rolling at 20th level. You would be previously rolling 5d12 on a crit instead of 2d12 for a crit.
Yeah. And, there were other abilities like the Orcish Brutal Critical ability. So you could be rolling
Add
like
more and
6.
more onto that.
So it was a very fun, it was an ability, it only happens like 5% of the time when you're swinging, but it was a very fun ability because
rolling more dice is more fun.
when else are you going to get to roll 5d12s for damage? We did the numbers, and what we came to realize is that if, let's say, you are at level 20 and you're using all the different kinds of weapons, it's a buff for all weapons below a d10. It's within the mathematic average of
for
a
D10.
For a d10, and it's below the average for a d12.
Yeah.
So that's what we mean by it being a buff and a nerf, depending upon the weapon you're using. But it also takes away the potential to roll, 5 of your damage dice for that weapon. A little bit less fun, we feel, just because you aren't rolling as many dice at once. But, it's a simpler ability. You don't need to, I guess, waste the time rolling for damage. It's just your flat level, easy to understand, good to go.
I like it.
Take it or leave it. And then next up is Persistent Rage. We kind of felt that this was a kind of a big nerf.
So the big difference, your rage lasts for 10 minutes. Persistent Rage, it would last indefinitely.
Yes. The only thing that would stop it is if you fell unconscious.
So I think with the added utility that they're going on with, I hate to say it was kind of necessary, because then you would always be subbing in that like 20 plus strength for these checks, which would be pretty nutty.
It drops it from level 15 to level 13. It gives additional conditions for how you lose your rage, and it removes the necessary ability to use a bonus action. It kind of creates this interesting dynamic where rage is felt much more as a resource. However, it kind of is like, meh, it doesn't feel too terribly great, because with the whole thing around the bonus action, this is a limitation that we put onto your class that what previously wasn't here. And now, as like a class feature, we're giving you back what it was. But, we can't really think about it in reference to what it was, because we are kind of going into a new system. It might not necessarily be fair to kind of judge this based on what it was.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this actually, but to speak against my nature for a second in favor of a Barbarian nerf, which is crazy to me, it does do a bit for roleplay. Like, after this certain level, why would you ever need more than one rage? Because you go to sleep, you get up in the morning, you start being ragey, and you don't stop until you go to bed that night. Mm-hmm. So I had a player who just said, by the way, I just at any given point assume I'm casting mage armor. And it's like, I really had I don't know why it tickled me so wrong, but I was started to consider what that really implied. It's like, and so I started having people teach him treat him like he's always getting ready for a fight, because this was a campaign with a lot of downtime. And so this guy was just walking around with like battle armor on, like arcane crafted battle armor. I don't know. I think you need to make considerations like that.
It does it
helps the fantasy to put limitations like this.
It is kind of strange to kind of think about, like, yeah, that barbarian is frothing at the mouth from the mushroom wine at all times.
Right.
No, he's actually just a rabid dog, and we keep him in the barn. But
he's still he's still Rage eats breakfast. Rage combs his hair. Rage, rides the horse to the guild hall. Rage picks his next job off the billboard.
Yeah. Rage kisses his wife goodbye for the day.
Rage drives his kids to school.
Yeah. Bottom line, it is kind of a nerf, but that nerf kind of feeds more into like the roleplay aspect. So not totally against it. It just kind of feels like odd.
It feels bad, man, but I get it.
Makes sense. Relentless rage.
Not to be confused with persistent rage. I really like this one.
I really like it too. It's kind of disappointing that it comes on at 15th level.
I think they moved this back, right?
They buffed it by giving it that ability.
It used to be that you come back with one hit point.
Now you come back with a lot more health than just one hit point, but they moved it from level 11 to 15.
And with a character whose whole thing is having damage, even if you're not a bear totem barbarian, it is a feels bad, man, to like come back with that one hit point. I think this is a flavor win. Like you said, it feels bad. It comes in 15th. Yeah, that's a bummer, but the buff itself is very much needed.
My kind of philosophy is that I think the survivability abilities should come in early and the kind of big walloping damage ability should come in later. And so I think, this ability should come in like closer to level 10, maybe even level 7. But, it is a good ability. I think it's cool. It just would have been nice if it was sooner.
Yeah, I think I'd probably keep it at 11th or 12th personally, but I think you could really make a case that a lot of these martial abilities could come sooner. And I keep harping on it, but that difference between martial and magic, I think you could always make a case to give a little bit of love to the martials.
Yeah, because especially when you think about what the wizards are able to do at 15th level, do you have 8th level spells at 15th level?
9th is 5th, 11th is 6th, 13th is 7th, 15th is 8th, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you're casting some crazy stuff, and this is like essentially improved Feign Death.
Right. At 15th level, reality is your bitch. Rage Resurgence.
So this one comes in at 17th level.
Feels bad, man.
It's a very late game ability. It's kind of similar to that the monk ability.
Monk and sorcerer both have things like this where they get their resource back at the start of initiative.
So I personally thought that this ability once again should have come in between like level 4 and level 7, but it comes in at level 17. And you were kind of saying that if it comes in at such a low level, you think it should definitely be sooner. You think it should be like 10 to 12th.
Yeah, right.
But not as early as what I think. You felt that if it came in too early, you would just be giving up the whole kind of narrative / mechanic that they're doing with conserving rage.
Yeah.
And it would kind of undermine what they were trying to do with this new barbarian.
Because you can milk this. Like, let me actually just read this straight up because it's very short. Whenever you roll initiative, you regain 1 expended use of your rage.
Doesn't automatically use it, regenerates a use.
Right. So first of all, it incentivizes having used a rage before you even fight the first time, if you're this level. And second, you can regain every use of a spell slot by fighting a commoner.
Or a rabbit.
4 times. Yeah. Rolling initiative for any reason. Which, we were talking about that actually sounds kind of fun. It's like, oh, we need to keep going, but our barbarian's out of rages. Vax, go
punch Grog.
Go punch Grog. Get him riled up.
Yeah, and what we were also saying was like having a resource that's dependent on the success or engaging in like a ritualistic hunt or a ritualistic fight before the true fight sounds really, really awesome.
Fight without your rage to earn your rage.
Yeah, I thought that would be like a great kind of ability. I kind of like the ability because it incentivizes using rage like really willy-nilly. Like it really
Mm-hmm.
incentivizes just kind of like one, always having a spare rage up so that you can regenerate one, and two, kind of using your rage outside of combat because you're like, oh, when I do get into combat, I'm always going to have one. If this ability kind of existed at like, lower levels, as if you have no more rages, you gain one use of
Right.
rage, I think that would have been a
Bard's
good
another
way.
one. Bard also gets inspiration back. Like
Yeah.
so many classes have a thing like that.
Yeah, it would have been nice to kind of see that.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that one earlier. I think I don't have a lot of predictions for how this Unearthed Arcana is going to play out, but if I would had to make one for all of them, I would say that people are going to come out of this wanting more rages in the block, and maybe that will get that feature bumped down.
Yeah, we'll
But
see.
Just real quick, Primal Champion has
Oh,
been changed. Previously, it gave you a +4 to Strength and Constitution to a maximum of 24 to a new maximum of 24.
this one is also kind of like it feels bad a little bit
Yeah,
because in vanilla the barbarian was the only one who by his own merit pushed his pushed the ability beyond 20 without need of magical items or external forces. So it really had, when you see that, it's like, whoa, that, like, it had a very strong wow factor.
right.
And so by this, it kind of loses that wow factor.
I was very taken aback by this until we read 2 feats later to Epic Boon. I wasn't too concerned. I like having a high raw strength, but you really consider we're talking about an 18th level barbarian at this point. I would hope that you have some kind of giant strength belt or
Yeah,
some item that increases your strength. So it's really about the constitution, and you can combo Primal Champion with this epic boon we'll talk about in a second
Yeah.
to get that effect back.
So yeah, while it is kind of like, ooh, that's not very nice, it does get counteracted, and I think this was the intention. It gets counteracted by the introduction of epic boons.
Right. So this is the new feature you're going to see on every class now is the 20th level epic boon, and they all read similar to this, but the score that they affect is obviously subject to what class you're playing. So now we're moving on to the subclass. This one is the Path of the Berserker. You go, Joe. I can't bear to read it.
Yeah. Frenzy no longer causes you to gain a level of exhaustion. In addition, it causes you to deal extra damage each round that you use your reckless attack instead of giving you a bonus action attack, which conflicts with the rage's use of bonus action. So with this new kind of primal knowledge ability in conjunction with the way that that rage works, the assumption is that you are going to be using your rage in other places, or sorry, you're going to need to use your bonus action in other places. And so your bonus action you're kind of being robbed of your bonus action. And
I mean, that's so debatable though. Like the thing with this one specifically, right, is it says the change is due to the need of a bonus action to maintain your rage, but making an attack, not even hitting, making an attack still maintains your rage. So if you are in a position where you want to use that bonus action attack, that's still a viable replacement to maintain your rage to just committing your bonus action.
yeah.
So it doesn't sit well with me. The damage that they provide in its place is pretty good. It's only the first attack on your turn, and you roll a number of d6s equal to your rage bonus. So it starts at 2d6 and goes as high as 4d6.
Yeah, it's I kind of have problems with it because not only is it like nerfing something by taking away an additional attack, it's also kind of undervaluing a weapon property that the barbarian would definitely make use of being graze. So like, let's say you miss, you steal with graze, you would still deal damage, and that would proc to keep your rage up.
Right. The no longer making you exhausted is pretty good. I'm a masochistic player, so I enjoyed that part, but martial classes need the buff. I'll take it.
There was no real reason, and like having even 1 or 2 levels of exhaustion on a martial really cripples them.
Yeah, I did it. I've had a couple of times where I've had like 3 levels of exhaustion on barbarian, still had fun, but were there any changes to mindless rage? Oh yeah, previously they would just be suspended, which I thought was pretty cool and flavorful, but same idea. Martial classes need the buff.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. It seems like there's been a design philosophy change to give each character an ability to snap themselves out of conditions. Like the sorcerer gains some sort of sorceress recovery ability to be used in combat that breaks off blind, deafened, and some other and paralyzed or something. And this is now still within the line of the flavor. It's charmed and frightened.
Retaliation has been moved from 14th level to 10th level. Good buff. Very
Good
solid.
buff.
That.
Other than that, no change. Intimidating Presence has moved from 10th to 14th level and has been approved. It can affect a group of creatures rather than only one. Your rage extends its range, and you don't have to spend your action to extend its duration.
Interesting point there. In the changes, maybe this was changed in a previous book then, but in the core books that we have, the DC for Intimidating Presence scales off of charisma, which, like as you mentioned, is kind of a problem. Now it scales off strength.
And combos with primal knowledge. I think that's a good change, but once again, moving the thing from 10th to 14th level just makes it feel like the thing is coming online later,
I don't think there's much at higher levels that is going to be as affected by that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of higher level things have immunities, condition immunities, and that's going to be one of them.
Yeah, what are you intimidating? This is Intimidating Presence is the bar brawling ability. That is the combat RP ability, and it's kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth that it's not sooner.
It's kind of a feels good moment in general though, because we said what DM wasn't already letting the barbarian use strength for this.
Yeah,
it's one of the logical ones that I think was already pretty common change.
Yeah, and then that is all of the changes for Barbarian. Final thoughts?
Bad.
Yeah, it could be better. Something to also think about is that these are temporary. These aren't set in stone. They still need to get a lot of feedback from the play testing.
Yeah, I would say play it. Put your experience in the comments. Try alleviate my fears.
Yeah.
Help me out here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Give us a comment and, share your opinions.
Thanks, y'all.